Yeah. And understanding communication at large is complex. We can very quickly change the course of somebody's day for the better or for the worse, depending on our communication, right? It is the exchange of information, between two people, and it's more than just exchanging words. We're trying to express ourselves with our communication. We're expressing our wants, our desires, our likes and dislikes, our moods, right? And we are using more than just words when we communicate. Words are important, and the words we choose are very important. But it's also a lot about this nonverbal communication, or these nonverbal messages we are sending as we communicate, as we use our words, right? Our emotions are also part of our communication. And our emotions can be contagious, yeah? If we're feeling great and happy and joyful, that usually can rub off on somebody else. And vice versa, if we're feeling kind of crabby or we didn't get enough sleep the night before, those emotions can rub off on somebody else, and vice versa. We pick up on people's emotions and unintentionally catch those emotions right at times. Oops, sorry, go back. Communication is also more about listening than it is talking. We have two ears and one mouth for a reason. And sometimes we need to step back and listen more. And that's listening with our ears, listening to the words, but also listening to the nonverbal messages that are being sent as well. We'll talk more about that. Communication also involves our background and our experiences and our perceptions of that moment too, or our perceptions of a person or a situation that we're in that can be influenced by our past and our culture, and that can come into communication. But it's complex, and there's many different parts of our brain that are being activated when we are communicating. And those parts of our brain all working together at the same time. So our brain has to see, the person we're communicating with is hearing, it's processing that information, it's being able to comprehend it, to think about what's being said, analyze what's being said, organize our thoughts into an appropriate response and being able to speak them. And that involves many different parts of our brain, again, working at the same time. And all of those factors are going to affect our understanding of our message, the understanding of a message, but also affect how we're communicating that message as well. And when you introduce dementia into this, it just makes everything a little bit more complex. And those parts of the brain that are having to work together at the same time can become more challenged. In the early stages of somebody with dementia, and this is general, more generic, these are common changes that we're going to see in the earlier stages for somebody. We'll see some forgetfulness of recent events for most people, recent conversations, instructions that we've asked somebody to do or we've been asked to do. Can start to misuse words or substitute words for things that we might not, or a person might not even understand that they're substituting a word or not using the right word. They can become more vague in their descriptions on how they're trying to describe something or get somebody's attention. Putting their thoughts in an organized manner and being able to speak them in an organized manner, that's all going to be challenged in the early stages. They can start to misuse names, misuse pronouns. The example here is I've lost the proper name of an object, but I still know what it's used for. So it might be, well, I need it's the thing. The thing over there. You know what I'm talking about. It's that more vague things. They are in the earlier stages, they do start to lose some of their vocabulary, and the vocabulary that they're losing are the words that we don't use necessarily every day, but they're still words that we use every once in a while, and I might lose that word, so I might substitute it with something else. If English is their second language, you might notice that first language starting to creep in. As the disease progresses, they'll lose English more and have that primary language they have. You'll see that more as well, but you can see some of that start in the early stages too. Can easily lose their train of thought. I start a sentence, but then I've lost my train of thought. Normally, normal aging, I can maybe take a few moments and get back on my train of thought, where it's triggered. Oh yeah, I was talking about this. But in the early stages, I might lose my train of thought and it's gone. Or I got easily distracted by something else or someone else, and now that's gone. And I might start talking about something totally different than what the group conversation was about. And they're going to have a hard time keeping up with multiple conversations that are happening in a group. You know, if you're in a large group of people, there might be several conversations going on at the same time. That's going to be increasingly difficult for somebody in the early stages. But even just keeping up with a longer conversation, the conversation's going on for a long time and they can't really keep up as well as they used to. Okay. And they're quick to change subjects to help. It's kind of a coping mechanism for them. They will start to rely on more visual gestures and cues to make sense out of things. And this is as they're losing their words, but they're also losing the comprehension of words. So being just to comprehend a conversation or even just specific words that we use. They get 3 out of every 4 words that we say is typically what they're saying. But that also means they miss about 1 out of every 4 words that we're using. So one of the words they might miss might be very important or crucial to that conversation or to the instructions that were provided, right? And they're having a harder time just processing complex instructions or even something that's demanding or moving too fast. You know, and it's not that they can't do something or they can't comprehend or communicate. It's just we really need to slow down and allow their brain time to process and to catch up and to maybe ask questions if they need to, or if we need to repeat something. If we do need to repeat something, or they ask us to repeat something, use the same words that we have been using, or maybe use more familiar words that would be more familiar to them. You can also see personality changes happen in the early stages, and this can be anywhere from depression, they might withdraw, they can have increased agitation, frustration, really increased anxiety. And all of these personality changes can really change the ability to communicate effectively. And this is their ability to communicate, but also comprehension as well. If I have this, this higher anxiety, it's harder for me to pay attention and focus, but it's harder for me to express myself the way I always have. And now I don't have everything I've always had, and my anxiety just can make it worse and make it more challenging and complex. Same as comprehension too, or the depression or the frustration. They might give signs that they understand, but they might not really comprehend very much, or not as much as they used to. You know, they might be watching the news like they always have, or reading the newspaper like they always have, and going through the same routines they've always done. And it looks normal. It looks like they've always been doing the same, or they're really catching on, or even just nodding in a conversation. It seems like they're keeping up with the flow of the conversation. But it could be at times they're retaining very little, or they're completely lost, but they're still able to give those outward signs and feedback that they're with us. That shortened attention span and easily distracted and harder to concentrate, especially for longer periods of time, longer conversations, longer events or situations. And of course, they have good days and bad days, just like you and I, but they can really affect that communication, especially on those bad days. Some things they do in the earlier stages that they can hide or attempt to hide those changes or deficits. And this is a coping mechanism. This is that the brain stepping in and saying, there's something different here, and I want to hide it. I don't want anybody to notice, right? So they can use humor. They can try just to avoid answering questions altogether. And they might start to parrot what others are saying, or just repeating what they hear other people saying. My mom had some dementia changes the last few years of her life, and I would notice this every once in a while. She would just say, well, that's what I was going to say, what she said. She said that several times. Well, yeah, you said, you took the words right out of my mouth. and she wasn't able to express herself or voice her opinions, or even at the restaurant, order what she wanted to order. She'll just be like, well, I'll have what they're having. Yeah, the chicken sounds good. I'll have that too. So they're just kind of saying and doing what they're seeing other people do. They can also withdraw from conversations or social situations, so they're not as active or social as they used to be. You can see that as well. But the other thing is they can be really good for short periods of time. When we feel like we're being watched or being tested, or it is those social situations where we all want to perform and be on our best behavior, right? We can all do really good for a period of time. But when we start to see more deficits or more challenges is when the conversation goes longer or that situation goes longer. And if the situation or conversation is demanding, or there's high stimulation in the environment, we can see an increased agitation or just challenges communicating at that point. They're having difficulty interpreting background noise. In the early stages, with dementia, the 5 senses do change how they interpret the world. In the early stages, it does really affect filtering out background noise. So I'm having a harder time, the brain's having a harder time being able to focus on what it needs to focus on, whether it's that person or that instruction or conversation, because I can't filter out what's going on in the background. And it'll increasingly get harder for them as the disease progresses, but that's something to take into account with communication. They can start using more forbidden words or insults, or might just say something that they would have not really ever said in the past. That might shock you. And it's not that they're trying to shock us or embarrass themselves or anything. They're just using the words that they have left to use. They're using the words they have left to use, and they don't have the filter. We start to see that filter start to be damaged in the earlier stages too. So we think about forbidden words or insults or cuss words, right? We all know those words and those phrases. We might not say them because we have a filter and it's not appropriate. But if I'm starting to lose that filter or that ability to stop myself from saying something or doing something inappropriate, then it can just come out. And that's generally start to see that start to slip, if you will, in the earlier stages. And they may not be aware that they've done that or said that, or that it's inappropriate. So they're starting to not recognize their deficits or their changes that are happening. And in the early stages, they can be confused in one moment, but not the next. Or they might be able to have a conversation pretty coherently with clarity with one person right here, and then turn around and with the next person, it's not. And with that, what's happening is the chemicals in the brain are changing as well as the structure of the brain. So the chemicals are firing or not firing and connecting the neurons well. So it's kind of like a light that flickers on and off. And at first you just kind of see a little flicker, but then it holds off. And the longer it goes on, there's more of a flicker in that light, the light turning on and off, and the flicker becomes more intense until one time it flickers and it goes out. So we see that with the brain and the chemicals. There's that wiring and everything's firing together, everything working just right. But if those chemicals are not moving the way it's supposed to, then we might have the flicker out of the light, or the ability to be confused in one moment, but not the next. And it can also do with the environment and the person that we're talking to too. So some things to think about with how we're going to communicate with somebody in the early stages. Knowing their decision-making ability is starting to be impaired in the early stages. It's not that they can't make those decisions. We just want to narrow those down so they can make decisions properly on their own. So it's not 5 choices, but it might be 3 or 2 choices. So they can still make those with them, make the choices for themselves. And we want to be patient and allow plenty of time to process and plenty of time for them to make those decisions or make those choices. And repetition, we see in the early stages too. They're repeating the same story, asking you the same question over and over again. And it is part of the brain that's being damaged. They don't remember that they don't remember that they don't remember. So we have to take a deep breath, be patient with ourselves, and just answer or listen like we've not been asked before, we haven't heard it before, and maybe redirect them. Another great tip is to inform them of events as they occur. So like a doctor's visit is a good example, excuse me. My mom had a doctor's visit coming up, and I wanted her to be prepared, and I wanted her to know about this. So I told her a couple of weeks in advance, hey, 3 weeks, 2 weeks, we got this doctor's appointment on Friday. For the next 2 weeks, when's that doctor's appointment? I don't want to miss the doctor's appointment. When was the doctor's appointment again? Now, is that doctor's appointment today? Are we going to miss that doctor's appointment? For the next 2 weeks, it was all about that doctor's appointment, because they can hold on to that. They can't hold on to when it is. So a best practice, or something that really helps mitigate that, is inform them of events as they occur. So it's that morning, we go help mom, and it's kind of like, hey mom, there's that doc, I forgot to tell you, I'm so sorry, but we have this just a really quick wellness checkup at the doctor, and then we're going to go to Sonic and get that burger you really like. And that can help with agitation. It can help with them just being not so worried about forgetting something, right? That helps. We can also see lack of apathy, apathy and lack of initiation. So they're not initiating those old hobbies or things they used to enjoy as well. This could be because they're depressed. It could be they don't want to make a mistake. They don't want to embarrass themselves. But we don't want to remind them of what they're not doing. Hey, why are you not going to, your old Bible study like you used to? You used to love doing that. Instead, let's ask them, hey, I want to drive you to Bible study. Will you come with me? And see their responses from there. And focus on the activities they still enjoy. Their likes and dislikes might change. And as their abilities change too. A Bible study in a large group might be too much for them, but maybe we get 2 or 3 people together to do a short Bible study and still include mom, and that's an activity that they still like. So encouraging and creating those opportunities for them to stay connected and stay independent, because that's part of, those activities are part of who they are. That's what their identity is in, and their purpose. So keeping that as best we can. A few do nots to do, and we'll talk more about these, but try not to reason with your loved one. The reasoning part of the brain is effective early on, and the ability to reason stuff out. And quite frankly, if we're trying to reason with somebody with dementia, we're trying to reason with a disease, not necessarily that person. We're not going to win the reasoning part of it, so try not to. And arguing as well. Arguing and insisting really never helps. And because there's another way to communicate, and a better way to communicate we'll talk about here in a second. Try not to confront them. They're doing the best they can with the changes that are happening to them, and confronting them or saying, you've always done this. Why are you not doing it this way? Well, they may not know the answer to that, or they may not even be aware that they're not doing what they used to, or they did something different this time. Try not to remind them if they forgot, or use the word remember. Remember, mom, we've already had this conversation. Mom, I just told you this. Don't you remember? You remember this, right? We've done this for several years now. If we can lose the word remember, that's really going to help everybody at the end of the day. And try not to question their recent memory. And then don't take it personally. This is, of course, it's real easy for me to say that, and doing it in real life is one thing, but taking their communication changes or frustration, or blaming you for something because you didn't tell them, or whatever it may be, try not to take that personally, because again, it's the disease and they're doing the best they can with what they have. So what we can do in the early stages, we want to focus on keeping things as normal as possible, keeping the routine as normal as possible, and really focus on and set up their life, their environment, their activities, their day. Set it up and focus on what they can do as opposed to what they can't do, and keeping things normal. So how do I set that day up? How do I set up their activities on what they can do as opposed to what they can't? We also don't want to make assumptions about their ability to communicate. Each person is affected very differently by this disease, and especially in the early stages, they, day by day, it can change. Their abilities can change, but can also change, in the morning they can do really well, and in the evening it's a little bit harder. So we don't want to make assumptions there, because they can change. They can fluctuate essentially throughout the day or day by day. We sure don't want to exclude them from conversations, particularly if it comes to their care or their future, right? Especially as it comes to decisions about future and how we're going to live the rest of our lives with them. Slow down. And slow down, physically slow down. We want to go at their pace. So even how fast we walk, but how fast we talk. We just need to slow down. And again, actively listening. So we got those 2 ears. We want to speak directly to them and approach them from the front. I have this in here somewhere, but we always want to approach from the front, because their vision changes are also happening. So if we come up from the side from somebody or behind them, they're more than likely not going to see you, and they may not hear you as well, so they can easily be startled. But if I'm approaching somebody from the front, that gives them ample time to make a connection and see me coming at them. And see what my agenda is. I'm there to talk. I'm friendly. I have a good body posture, body language, and a smile on my face, so I can seem friendly, and they can get those visual cues first and then approach them in that way. And we also don't want to lean over them or lean toward them. We just want to go to their level, whether I sit down next to them or whatever it is. I want to be at their level. I don't want to lean over somebody, because that can be confusing. It can be confrontational as well. And just how we're I've leaned over them, we can look confrontational, look intimidating, and we don't want to set that vibe. Don't interrupt unless requested, or don't answer for them. Right? This is what I think I mean. Don't answer for them unless it's requested. They're having a hard time finding that word. And we want to allow plenty of time for them to find that word, or even plenty of time for them to respond to something that we've said, and not to fill in the silence as we might need to. It takes about 20 seconds for somebody to process the words that we use. And 20 seconds can be a long time. It really gets into that awkward silence part for a lot of us. So be wary about not filling in that silence, and only repeat the question or help them with finding that word they're looking for if they really ask, or if they're having a hard time. You can even ask them, do you mean X, Y, and Z, after we give them plenty of time to respond. And if we're giving instructions or helping them with a task or something, it's really using simple commands and only using the words that are needed. And break it down into small steps. So it's really one thought at a time. If I'm helping them do something, let's be successful at this one part of this task, and then let's move on to the next one. Instead of giving them 3 or 4 things to do, let's do this first one. Let's be successful at it, and then we'll move on to the second one. This is where we're approaching from the side. And approaching from the front, and don't lean over them, and then stand to their dominant side. If we're going to help them or just be in conversation or sit next to them, if we sit on their dominant side, that helps the brain and helps them be able to see you better. But it's also, you feel more comfortable when somebody's on your dominant side. You might have to identify yourself or other people just to help them remember. And that's helping set them up for success on who everybody is, what maybe my relationship is to them. And that way I can keep everything in context as best I can. I went and saw, my grandfather had dementia, and he lived in a different city, but when I would go and visit him, I would give him context of, hey, Grandpa, it's Jamie. I'm your favorite granddaughter. So I gave him that context. I told him my name, and I gave him why he knows he knows me. You can lightly touch the person or keep saying their name to help keep them on task, to help them not be distracted. But you can also lightly touch them as well for reassurance, redirect if you need to, but just keep them calm and keep them on task, or keep them connected with you. If you need to get help from persons in authority with big decisions. So in the early stages, it's that repetition, and we're focusing on what they're still able to do, but some big decisions happen in the early stages, like managing medications, getting powers of attorney on financial papers or legal paperwork. Driving is another one. Are they still able to drive? moving. They might need to move to a place if they're living alone, or we're moving people into their home. So these big life changes can happen in the early stages. And if we get persons in authority, whether it's a doctor, it's a lawyer, somebody, it's a religious leader that they trust to help with those decisions, or to help say, we're going to start with the keys. We're going to have somebody in the car with you at all times. This is a doctor's order. We have it written down, because usually they will hear that better and respond better when it's somebody in authority. A lot of the times we don't need our child or a spouse or a sibling telling us what to do, but I'll hear it better from my doctor or my lawyer. And again, arguing and insisting never helps. And if there are feelings or emotions that are being expressed, and maybe you don't understand the words, but I can tell they're frustrated and agitated, I want to validate that feeling. I know this is frustrating. I know this is agitating, and I'm sorry about that. And sometimes we need to stop. We need to stop what we're doing and come back and try again later. We also don't want to pull away. We really want to start nurturing our relationship, even though the relationship's probably changing, but we want to stay. We want to be their support. We want to be honest. We want to be a friend. This friendship is crucial. And again, that normalization, keeping stuff normal and your relationship as normal as possible, is crucial. A calm, reassuring voice has a lot to do with this nonverbal message we're trying to send, right? And remove distractions. Make sure the environment's appropriate for them so they can hear you, they can see you. They're not easily distracted by the TV that's on over here. Just setting them up for success. And use calendars and clocks or environmental cues so they can help orient themselves to the day. So if it is a calendar, and I have the day today, and I highlight this is the day, so they can orient themselves to what day it is, if that's appropriate. Or the clock, they have Alzheimer's clock that has the day and the time and the temperature and the season, so they can orient themselves to where they are in time and place. And a couple of last things is appropriate conversation cues. I said don't quiz them, don't question their recent memory. But this is not a use it or lose it situation. Dementia is not, and I've heard this several times before, but if we keep mom on, we keep her quizzed up and we make sure she knows who everybody is in this picture, the more she uses it, the better it's going to be. She can relearn a lot of these things. Well, with dementia, that's unfortunately not the case. So we don't want to quiz them or make them, come up to my grandfather and say, now, who am I? You remember who I am, right? You know who I am. Well, that's not fair, because they may not in that moment, and that's part of their brain that's gone or severely damaged. So it's not a use it or lose it type thing. So we don't want to quiz them. Just give them the information that they need to be successful. Like it did, hey, I'm your favorite granddaughter, and we're going to go on and do something happy together. Social skills, social chit chat, stay for a long time. So in those longer term memories, we want to use those topics that they did when they were younger, or maybe a kid, bring those up as conversation cues. So we need to know our loved ones and know their past, so we can use their past to help connect with them today. And use distractions as appropriate. In the middle and later stages, this is going to be very helpful, but especially if somebody's upset or frustrated, or we need to redirect them away. Food is great. Sweets are the best. Music, their music is a great way, but also kids and animals are really great distractions as appropriate. And then here is that nonverbal communication that I've alluded to. Knowing while they're processing the words that we're using, again, it's just going to take them longer. They're going to be able to pick up on how we communicate something, just like we all do. It's that verbal, but also that nonverbal message that we're communicating. They'll pick up on that nonverbal first, however. So they'll always be able to pick up on that and respond in kind. So if I'm calm, I'm reassuring, I'm friendly, then they'll generally respond the same way. But if I'm coming at you and I'm impatient and I'm moving fast, then they might respond the same way too, or might not appreciate that and respond with agitation because they're picking up on that nonverbal message. This communication breakdown, words are important, and we want to use our words and tell them what we're doing, what's going to happen next. But it is that body language and tone of voice and facial expressions, and how fast we're moving too is important. So there's that, and we went through that very quickly. I'm going to send you guys the slides today, this afternoon, along with the recording of this program. So you have that and to make notes on or to read, and to I will also ask you to share this information with people that you think would benefit. So, are there any questions or comments?
Good stuff.
Thank you, Guy. All right, well, we appreciate it. Be looking for that email with the slides, and hopefully we'll see y'all next week when we talk about do's and don'ts for middle stage dementia.
Thank you.
Thank y'all.